Hi, we're Quaint and Curious Volumes. My name is James. Today, I'm going to talk about The House of the Seven Gables by Nathaniel Hawthorne. This is going to be part 2 of my review that I started last week as part of the Gabepril or Gabepril reading event in the month of April 2024, where we read books with Gable in the title, including The House of the Seven Gables, previously mentioned, Hedda Gabler or Gabler, and Anne of Green Gables. So I had initially scheduled this to be read in 2 halves over the first 2 weeks of April. Nothing wrong with that. But I thought that it would take longer than it actually did. I knew this was a 19th century Gothic novel, so I think I assumed that it was going to be a bit longer, and I finished it in about a week. My co-host for Gable April, Debs at Rainer Reads, she read House of the Seven Gables in 1 week, and she also read like 12 other books. So that's the kind of reader that Debs at Rainer Reads is, apparently. I read it in a week. That's the kind of reader that I am. So, Hawthorne, whom I had read in high school. I believe I said this in my previous video. We were assigned the Scarlet letter, which is a very common high school reading assignment in the United States. I read it. I remember the basic plot of it. I don't remember liking it very much. I found it a bit probably too ornate. I liked Hemingway when I was in high school. I still do like much of Hemingway. But I have to say, I am reassessing Hawthorne, and I really now want to go and reread The Scarlet Letter, because The House of the Seven Gables is just so good. It's just so well written and so strange. And I can't help but think I must have missed a lot in The Scarlet Letter when I was just a lad. So this book, as I said last week, it has a prologue where you're introduced to kind of the backstory of the Pynchon family and this possible curse that they suffer from, where they were cursed by a wizard 150 years ago. Then we go to the present day, in which the well, Mall's well, is still there, and the current day Pynchons will not drink from it. There is Hepzibah Pynchon, a single woman in her 60s who has never married and never had children, and she's started running a store, a scent shop, which is, I guess, kind of like an old New England version of a convenience store. Her cousin Phoebe arrives and joins the household, working in the garden, tending the chickens, working part-time in the shop, and people like her more than Hepzibah. Hepzibah is old, and a lot of people think that she's ugly. They say that over and over again, or that she has a sour look to her. Then Hepzibah's brother, Clifford, arrives. Clifford has been in prison for several years for the murder of their uncle. So and Clifford is very strange. He's emotional. He's scared of the world. He sleeps a lot, but he forms a bond with Phoebe that is touching. He is a companion to Hepzibah, so they're starting to form this little family. There's another neighborhood strange person, Uncle Vetter, I think they call him, and he kind of goes around doing odd jobs and is talking about retiring to the workhouse, which he calls his farm. They start having little gatherings in the backyard, very humble gatherings on Sunday afternoon, and things are starting to seem like like a weird sort of a family. Also the lodger, Holgrave, who is a daguerreotypist, starts joining them for these parties. He and Phoebe become friends, and they're both young people, so you know what might start to happen with that. Anyway, in the second half of this book, we get some more unusual visions of what's going on with these people. There is um, a section in which Clifford and Phoebe are looking out at the neighborhood. You know, this is a very slow book in terms of plot and action, but Clifford is watching, and an organ grinder, a young Italian man who is an organ grinder, comes by and sets up his organ, and this is a device with a crank on it. You turn it and it plays kind of a preset piece of music. I'm always interested in scenes of organ grinders in fiction because one of my ancestors in the New World here was an organ grinder. So I like to read about them. But there's a long description of not so much of the music, but of sort of a mechanical play that is part of his organ device, and it has people doing things. It has like a scholar writing things, and I think maybe a guy shoeing a horse, and it just kind of goes in a circle. So no one ever really completes their task. And there is a monkey, of course, which was commonly used by organ grinders. They would have a trained monkey who would go around with a cup and solicit donations. So people would put some coins in the monkey's cup as payment for the organ grinder's performance. So the mechanical figures, of course, are representative, perhaps, of the Pynchons, who are kind of stuck in this position. You know, things are changing a little bit with these new people being added, but Hepzibah, she's been kind of stuck. She doesn't, who's going to inherit this house? What's going to happen? There's this piece of land up in Maine that they think they have a claim to, but nothing's really moving forward. Clifford seems to be stuck in this post-incarceral state where he's not establishing himself in the world. Maybe he's not able to, the kind of dynamic figure in this is Holgrave, the lodger, and he's a young kind of bohemian man who's like, we has kind of these wild ideas, like maybe we shouldn't even have houses, man. Did you ever think of that? Like, what's the deal with that? Then something rather shocking happens with their cousin, with Hepzibah's and Clifford's cousin, Jaffrey, who is a judge, kind of in this time period. He is the most prominent of the Pynchons, and he's got all kinds of business dealings around town and around the state. But he checks in from time to time and offers to help, but Hepzibah and Clifford, they don't like him. Clifford fears him. Hepzibah resents him. But at a certain point, okay, it's going to start getting spoilery. So if you don't want to have the House of the Seven Gables spoiled for you, you probably want to stop at this point. And just know that your old friend James at Quentin Curious Volumes highly recommends that you read The House of the Seven Gables. It's not as long as you think it will be. It's slow-moving but very atmospheric and worth your time. What happens is we get some very strange chapters in which, it takes an entire chapter for Hepzibah to go into a room and look through it, and Jaffrey just sort of spontaneously dies. Hepzibah thinks that he may have been murdered by her brother Clifford. And they leave, and they go, and there's this long chapter of the brother and sister, like two owls, making a sudden flight from town. Clifford sort of takes the lead, and he's like, "Come on, we have to go." And they go, and they get on a train, and it's sort of told from this perspective of you're watching them from above and seeing how they're going and the conversations they're having. And Clifford sort of starts to befriend another passenger, and they have this conversation where Clifford basically says that time is a flat circle, and everyone starts to say, "This guy's pretty weird, isn't he?" And then they get off the train at a stop, but it seems like there's nothing there except an abandoned house and a church that's falling apart. And the rain it's been raining the whole time, and Hepzibah, asks God for mercy, and then that's the end of the chapter. And we go to an even stranger chapter, which is told in present tense. And if you remember the chapter "Time Passes" in To the Lighthouse, this is kind of similar because it's a room that only has the dead Judge Jaffrey Pynchon in it, and the narrator is kind of addressing Pynchon, like, when's he going to get up and do the things he had planned today? This person is expecting him. His horse is at this stable. He's engaged to go and file these papers somewhere, and he's just sitting there. And when is he going to get up? And we're just sort of circling around the room. And it's just masterful. It goes on and sort of weaves a bit of a spell. Wow, this is crazy. So it seems it is revealed to us that he has revealed that he's dead in a similar way to Colonel Pynchon way back in the olden days, who was just covered in blood spontaneously. So at this point, oh right, I haven't told you that where is Phoebe? Phoebe had to go visit her folks for a little while, and she's going to come back at some point. So eventually, everyone does kind of come back to it, and it turns out that Jaffrey has died of a congenital condition. This seems to be something in the genes of the Pynchons, where they can spontaneously just drown in their own blood. So it's not really explained if it's a medical thing or in fact part of this curse, but it's not murder either way. There is a fantastic bit that I have flagged up here. Let me find the quote. Where Hawthorne is kind of talking to the reader, perhaps rebuking the reader. This is in the voice of Holgrave, the daguerreotypist. "Undoubtedly," said the daguerreotypist, he's speaking to Phoebe, "I do feel an interest in this antiquated, poverty-stricken old maiden lady," that's Hepzibah, "and this degraded and shattered gentleman," that's Clifford, "this abortive lover of the beautiful. A kindly interest, too, helpless old children that they are. But you have no conception what a different kind of heart mine is from your own. It is not my impulse, as regards these two individuals, either to help or hinder, but to look on, to analyze, to explain matters to myself, and to comprehend the drama which, for almost 200 years, has been dragging its slow length over the ground where you and I now tread." How does Holgrave know so much about the past of this? "If permitted to witness the close, I doubt not to derive a moral satisfaction from it, go matters how they may. There is a conviction within me that the end draws nigh. But though Providence sent you hither to help, and sends me only as a privileged and meet spectator, I pledge myself to lend these unfortunate beings whatever aid I can." Phoebe says, "I wish you would speak more plainly," cried Phoebe, perplexed and displeased, "and above all, that you would feel more like a Christian and a human being. How is it possible to see people in distress without desiring more than anything else to help and comfort them? You talk as if this old house were a theater, and you seem to look at Hepzibah's and Clifford's misfortunes and those of generations before them as a tragedy, such as I have seen acted in the hall of a country hotel. Only the present one appears to be played exclusively for your amusement. I do not like this. The play costs the performers too much, and the audience is too cold-hearted. Are they talking about us reading this book like, what's going to happen to these weirdos? Maybe so. Anyway, if you like slow, atmospheric Gothic novels with perhaps unsatisfying endings, although I mean it wraps up, things happen. We find out who Holgrave is. We find out why these Pynchons suddenly drown in their own blood, sort of. Give this a read. I also, Hawthorne was a big influence on Herman Melville, and particularly on Moby-Dick. I think Melville, after reading Hawthorne, was sort of revised his former Cooperian style into what you find in Moby-Dick. And I can see some of that in The House of the Seven Gables, in sort of these standalone chapters where it takes a different point of view or has a different style. I think you definitely see some of that reflected in Moby-Dick. Melville famously kind of became obsessed with Hawthorne and moved into his neighborhood, and maybe Hawthorne was kind of wary of Melville a bit, maybe Melville was the Ripley to Hawthorne's Dickie Greenleaf, if that means anything to you. I watched the first 2 episodes of the Netflix Ripley show. Very slow, and that the actor playing Ripley, I forget his name. He's in a lot of things. He's great, but he's like 20, 25 years too old to be Tom Ripley, I think. My opinion. Anyway, a lot of nice scenery. If you like staircases, pretty good. So that is that. Next week we'll be talking about Hedda Gabler. I've already read that, and boy, that's a real corker. So thanks for watching, Gablers. Keep on gabling on, and thanks. I'll talk to you again later. Bye.